If you've gone to most airports now, they have driverless trains.
Yeah.
Detroit, Newark, many of them.
Atlanta.
You get on the air train, it's remote, and electric. And so pretty soon the shuttle buses will be that. Pretty soon the city mass transit will be that. Pretty soon the train and mass transportation system will be that. I think we're going to see that first. And then, autonomous technology right now is here and it's up to standard. It's just a question of us as humans being willing to accept it.
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. Well, it's a new year. There's new things happening. There's things that were happening before that you didn't even realize were happening. The master of trend analysis, Carl Gould, is with us now. You find him at carlgould.com. And Carl, Happy New Year. It's great to have you back on the show.
Hey, happy 2024, Kerry. Great to be back and looking forward to a productive year.
All right. So what of 2024? We talked about people working from home, not going back to the office. This has led to massive dislocations in the commercial real estate industry. Things like that are going on. Looks like less and less people heading to the malls all the time. What do you see for 2024 in terms of trends?
Yeah, so if we want to take commercial real estate as the first one, commercial real estate has to reinvent itself. It's been a troubling time. The pandemic accelerated what was already happening, which is that, companies just simply don't need as much space as they did before, right? So the pandemic comes along. We have to send all of our employees home, but we've got these massive leases that we have for commercial real estate. So we have to get rid of those. We have to leave. We have to break those leases. We have to get out of that commercial space. And so now there's a glut of office space. The New York City has a glut of office space. There are a number of, there are hundreds of thousands of square feet that are empty right now. And the commercial real estate world has to reinvent itself. And you're seeing it where they're converting what was once office space into partially residential, partially industrial. There's rezoning that's going on. Now, because of that, that affects businesses. They want to come back to the office because over the last couple of years, they realized that you don't build a great business by sending everybody home, putting them in a silo, and then rarely speaking with each other. So they want everyone to come back, but they don't even have the space for all of them if they could get them back. So what are they doing? So the hybrid workplace is becoming more and more prominent, and you're going to see that as a trend for at least the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay, so the hybrid workplace, we're talking where you work 2 days or 3 days in the office, 2 or 3 days at home.
Mm-hmm.
And, so can people really be as productive at home as they are in the office? We're not talking about people that own their own companies, but employees and other contract workers and such. Is it possible to keep them as productive?
I struggle with, are they as productive? They can be efficient, a little bit more efficient because they're not driving to work and driving back. And if they're already on their computer, there are certain things that if, for a long-term project, that sort of thing, so they're not interrupted as much. But for the most part, you're going to be more productive at work. There was a study that showed that if you put a lower productive person next to a higher productive person, the lower productive person will increase their productivity by at least 15% just by being in the same room with a higher achiever or a higher performing person. So there is something about being in the same room with other people, right? You're not as likely to just go take a nap or walk in the next room and watch TV if you're at the office. You're more likely to maintain the momentum of the day, and you're more likely to get things done if you have to leave by a certain time. Whereas when you're working at home, you're going to say, oh, what's the big deal? I'm home anyway. I'll just pick it up tomorrow. So And so there's that aspect of it, and there's also the mental health aspect of it. It's no coincidence that mental health issues have risen, during the time of the pandemic when everyone was stuck at home for that extended period of time. It's not a coincidence.
Okay, so I buy that, that productive people, that's why you hire them, and they bring a certain energy to your workforce and help you get more out of your workforce than you could perhaps by yourself. Is there any way to replicate that from working from home, do you think?
Well, you could have, and I've seen teams do it, you could have what's called virtual workshop time. So rather than having a huddle that says, hey, for the next 2 days, we're going to work on these projects on our own, you would leave the video on as if everybody was in the room together, and you would all be working and collaborating as if you're all in the same room.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a law firm that we know of where one of the partners at his desk leaves his video on if he's working remotely, and you could walk into his office as if he were there, and you could have impromptu meetings on the spot. So there are ways to do that. We've seen that work. That could be, and again, you still have the person looking at you, you're looking at them, you're working together at the same time. So there are ways that you could be a bit more productive. The other thing that you can do is use a technique called time blocking, where you block out, say, 2 hours, and you say, I'm going to give you this deliverable 2 hours from now, let's say 12 o'clock. And that person at 11:50 goes on there and says, hey, do we have that? Yes, we do. Great. Thank you. And they take that and they run with the next part of that task. So you can use time blocking, you can use deadlines, you can use open virtual workshops. So there are ways to remain equally as productive.
Okay, so, I was watching something the other day. Even air traffic control towers, they're doing remotely. Now, obviously, you can't be an air traffic controller from the comfort of your living room, but they're actually in smaller airports with less traffic. They're setting up remote towers, and then in a larger air traffic control center, they've got the feeds to those cameras, and a controller, spends part of his time controlling that airfield that was otherwise uncontrolled, and hopefully making it more safe. It's happening mostly in Europe, not so much in the U.S. So that type of remote work really can be beneficial, and the ability to tie together offices. So you have a big screen there, and you keep the video feed going, and everybody's one big happy family, right?
Yeah, you're live. It might be so if you think about it, if you had 3 small airports that required one person at each, that person is literally working in a silo by themselves. However, you take those same 3 people, put them in the same room, and say, you are now responsible for these 3 small airports. You can have rotating shifts. You have people collaborating at the same time. That might actually be, that's one of those scenarios where being remote, because it's live, it's interactive, and it's collaborative, can build a really strong culture.
Yeah, I like the concept of it, and it should increase overall safety. And then it's pretty soon, it's like, they build these huge towers at airports. They're like 350 feet high, so they can see everything that's going on, and still they can miss things. But if you have like a bunch of video feeds, they don't necessarily need to be at the airport or they could just be in a regular building and doing the same or better work. So this is an example where the technology just never really stops moving, does it?
Right. And in a case like that, they're using basically the same technology that they would use if they were at that airport. Yes, you are missing the availability of a window where you can look out and physically see the runway, but for every other use, it's the same. So yeah, those are some examples as to where it could be. I think over time, we're seeing a massive restructuring of the workforce. Now, we always say to our clients, you should staff to the valleys, subcontract to the peaks. That's a big thing for us. So, and we're seeing that more and more as a trend. So companies are saying, what's our slowest time of year? We will have W-2 employees for that. and we will use agencies and other companies in a strategic alliance to cover our peak busy times. That's going to allow a company to correct itself and have everybody back into an office. So I think the trend is back to the office. The office is going to be a more enjoyable place to be because it's not just going to be work. It's going to be work, play, right? You're going to have work, play, relax. It's going to be like a third spot. There's going to be a lounge. There's going to be some interactive areas. There might be a gym in the building. It's going to have other services. So going to work is not going to be the same as it was, 10, 20 years ago.
I find it interesting. I've been working from home for the past 13 years. And for me, it's my company. I'm going to be as productive as I can be, regardless where I'm working. But I do miss the concept of having someplace to go. And I thought about a co-working space. It's just not practical when you have a studio. They do have studios there. It's costly, and I kind of discounted that. But I do miss the ability to see people and interact and tell jokes and stories and all that. So I feel like this millennial generation, or the Zs, who really came into the workforce during the pandemic and after, kind of missing out on something. Hey, one other trend I want to talk about is the real robot trend, Optimus from Tesla, which appears that they're really going to be doing tasks that in the past only humans can do. And how fast is that going to catch on? I think it's going to be huge.
Yeah, I think, look, robots have been part of our lives for years. We haven't used the word all that much, but when we send an email, we use a robot. When we went online and we reserved our table at a restaurant, we used a robot, right? So robots have come in a lot of different forms, but robots have been cutting our lawn and they've been cleaning our carpets for a while, and robots have been, brewing our coffee hitting our alarm, announcing our alarms in the morning. So yes, you're going to see a trend where there's going to be more and more and more robotics. So you remember the Jetsons cartoon, right? When you were a kid.
I love that. That was basically the Flintstones. It was the Flintstones set in the future. Exactly.
So the Jetsons, where there was a robot maid and they did video calls and they got into their little spaceship, and when they went to their office and, the kids used, at the time they showed that they used these phones, these small phones that you could make video calls on. All of those things, that's where we're headed, because look, the reality is there are certain tasks that we just, as humans, don't need to be doing, but we're doing them because we haven't invented the robot yet. Think about it. We used to wash our dishes by hand. We put them in a dishwasher now. Is anybody really lamenting the fact that we're not washing dishes? Is there going to be a world crisis if, all of our carpets and our walls get cleaned by a robot or a drone? No one's going to care because we don't want to be doing that work anyway, right? Yeah. So there are certain work that just makes sense too because, and it just, there's better things to be doing with our time. And so I think you're going to see increasingly more use of robots. And I think we're going to embrace it. I don't think this is one of those things that we're regretting or trying to shun. I think we want them.
Right. I think there's jobs that we never contemplated doing because it's impossible for a human to do it. And these jobs will be able to be performed by robots, and they're meaningful, but they were just impossible before this.
Remember that the tractor was going to end civilization as we knew it because it was going to put the farmer out of work. And what are we going to do with all the mules and the horses?
Yeah,
a tractor, right? So you're right. People think that technology is going to hurt or change our lives. It's the opposite. The lack of technology is slowing down the progression in our lives.
Right. I go back to Luddites. They were members of a 19th century movement of English textile workers who opposed the loom,
Yeah.
Fortunately, they lost, because if they had won, we probably wouldn't have any technology now. That was 200 years ago.
Exactly. And because of the loom, it led to other types of manufacturing. And now we have mattresses and clothes, and we can create products that we could never create before on any scale. I mean, it does require change, and I know change is scary for some people, but at the end of the day, technology is going to make our lives better in many ways, not necessarily inhibit ours.
And if they try to go smash the Optimus robots, those robots might be fighting back, right?
Well, we want the Jetsons. We don't want the Terminator, for sure.
Well, in warfare, drones and everything else we're seeing, and pretty soon I believe that robots will displace many of the soldiers on the battlefield, and then it's going to be who can build the best robots and with the most robots at any given time, right?
Oh, there's no doubt. Listen, my son is in the Army. He's out in the field, and I love the fact that they have drones, that they can send a personal drone around the corner to see where the enemy is, rather than sending humans out there and only to find out where the enemy is. So yeah, drones are very much in use right now. A lot of technology. If you remember, the reason why the movie Top Gun Maverick took so long to make was they were trying to find a viable story, because in air warfare, drones are in such prominent use. There's just simply not a lot of dogfighting that happens anymore. No. We have the planes, we need them, but the drones do most of the dirty work.
They do, and they combine, they become a force multiplier. Well, thank you for your sacrifice and your son's service. We appreciate that. And yeah, it's really interesting because it just the AI combined with the robotics taking over. I mean, you can see the day coming when you're not going to need drivers anymore, right?
Right. Well, you're starting to see that already with municipalities, airports that are using. If you've gone to most airports now, they have driverless trains. Yeah. Detroit, Newark, many of them. Atlanta. You get on the air train, it's remote, and electric. And so pretty soon the shuttle buses will be that. Pretty soon the city mass transit will be that. Pretty soon the train and mass transportation system will be that. I think we're going to see that first. And then, autonomous technology right now is here, and it's up to standard. It's just a question of us as humans being willing to accept it. But the technology is here now. We can deploy it now.
Yeah. So, with this winter and this cold snap, there was a lot of things with people having problems charging their cars at public charging stations, the EVs, and the range goes down because it's cold. And, the modern day Luddites are basically saying, "Yeah, you see, we told you these EVs were no good." But EVs are here to stay, right? And they're going to predominate.
Oh, there's no question. There's no question the EVs are here to stay. Let's think back to when cell phones first came out. There were more cell phones than there was support. There was more cell phones than there were networks to support them. Remember when the whole thing, we still talk about it today. How many times do your calls drop? How many times do your calls drop?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Do you have me? Oh, sorry. Dropped off the call. We accepted it because there are still more. I remember I had the big bag phone in my car.
Oh, God, yeah.
In the 90s. Right? Yeah, exactly. It was like that big, recon thing you put on your back. It was a brick. And so even still 30 years later, there's still more phones out there than, networks to support it. Go to a hotel or go to a concert or go to a conference center and try to use the Wi-Fi there. It's so slow because it can't handle the 10,000 people that are on it at any given time. So there's always going to be that. And EV car sales will always be greater than the electrical grid to support it. It's always going to be the case.
For the next 50 years, probably. Yeah.
Exactly. But what's going to happen is it will force those that will profit from it to figure out how to make better battery technology. Or if you remember, Tesla's vision in the beginning was that they would own the battery, you would drive the car. So you'd pull into a charging station and they would just swap out your battery pack, right? So we might see some, the fuel cell. We might see that, the battery cell, I should say. So we might see that still. I mean, there will be technological advances that allow for us to support the electrical grid. You know, I think those cars make sense. There's a lot less moving parts. There's a lot less maintenance. You ask a Tesla owner how much service they have to do to their vehicle after a few years, it's rare. It's software updates. You might have to redo the brakes. You might have to change the tires, but it's a lot less moving parts. So there's a lot of efficiencies there, you know. So I think that's a trend that's going to continue.
Very true. Well, a lot of interesting things coming for 2024, and you just have to pick your place and go for it, I think. Carl, just tell us again where we find you, how we connect with you on the web.
You can find me at carlgould.com. That's CarlGould.com. And that's the best way to that we can intersect.
All right. And we'll save you the typing in the URL. Just go to the show notes to this show and financialsurvivalnetwork.com. The link is there. Click it. Take you right there. While you're there, sign up for your free newsletter. Carl, always a pleasure. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks, Kerry. Happy 2024 to you all.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.